Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I'm going to present a theory or idea or integration or something like that, which I came up with years ago and still catches objectivists off guard when they hear it. So, I'm going to go through it with you here. I often say that I don't have any particularly original material or things to say. I am an objectivist. If somebody finds me interesting, it's probably because they find objectivism interesting and they like to apply objectivism to reality and they want thoughts in that grain, and that's what I do. I'm not breaking new ground. This particular idea, I think, might be something that objectivists haven't said. Also, I'm putting this out into the objective sphere. And if it's incorrect, now's your chance to correct me. If Ayn Rand has said this, or if Peikoff has said this, then where is it? I'm not sure. Maybe it is somewhere. And please bring it to my attention. And if they haven't said it, am I incorrect? Am I equivocating? All right, so let's go forward. Now, the question arises with the study of ancient societies and cultures, or all societies and cultures, with what would be called sociology if sociology wasn't a junk science with a bunch of Marxists running it. If sociology were done correctly and objectively, we would look into the history of various societies and we would come up with this question. Why is it that every single one of them, with 100% reliability, every single one of them has come up with altruism as its ethical theory? Now, if we view altruism and egoism as there's two possibilities. There's altruism and egoism. Then it's a 50-50 chance, right? But that's not the case. Egoism is rationality. It's being in accordance with reality. It's like walking a tightrope. You have to check with reality every single step of the way or you'll fall off the tightrope. And altruism is every single other direction besides the tightrope. So it's not a coin toss. All right? So that's why ancient societies could either come up with extremely narrow scientific view of things, or they could do a billion myriad of other things. So it's not a coin toss. All right. Excuse me. But it's interesting that they all come up with altruism. Why not some other variant? Why altruism as such? Why is it the default? Now you're going to say they're not all identical, right? We've got ancient Greece is our best example. And maybe we should leave it out, but I'm going to allow to put it in because they were altruistic in the sense that they were willing to sacrifice Socrates. He hadn't done any harm. He had insulted their gods. So if you make me kick the Greeks out as an example, then there are only examples in history of a society that chose the I path, the integrated path, the rationality path, egoism. And they weren't 100% consistent in it. The United States could be the other one, right, in modern history. But speaking anthropologically, through the history of all mankind going back tens of thousands of years, very odd that altruism is the default state. Now, this is confusing to guys like Richard Dawkins, who then has to figure out why altruism is the default state. Objectivists are going to have a much better answer, and they're going to have an easier time of it than Dawkins. Dawkins is going to try to justify altruism or figure out what its real nature is or something. It can't lead to destruction. It has to help in the end if it's something that everybody does all the time. Anyway, now that Dawkins' view of it is just completely mistaken. Completely mistaken. So here's the meat and bones of my view. Here it is. You cannot draw a distinction between altruistic action and irrational action. You cannot draw a distinction between them. You can, at some level, somewhere in the argument structure, you can point to motives and say he did this because. But ultimately, you cannot separate self-destructive actions from irrational actions. Now, altruism does not mean benevolence or kindness to others. You've got to just drop that from your head. It means self-sacrifice. It means doing something that you don't benefit from. Something from which you do not benefit. Now, it occurs to me that there's always some benefit, even if you do something tragic to somebody. Like you kill the Jews, somebody gets their apartment. But I don't know why that occurs to me, so let's not worry about that. Altruism is the irrational. Now, how is it that every ancient society, all societies, all come up with some altruistic thing? Because doing the rational is very difficult, right? Aristotle set down some rules of logic and stuff. We've had some cultures that are very rational. The United States of America has been quite rational, right? Science became very rational. Newton was very rational. Rationality is a thing, and it's been growing, and it's there. And to the extent that societies are rational, they are not altruistic. Right? They are not self-sacrificial. They are not self-destructive. Now, if you're not sure whether altruism and irrationality are the same phenomenon, the identically same phenomenon, because that's my assertion, that's my case, that's my... It's not an assertion, is it? That's my integration, that's my point. I'll call it an assertion and see if you can knock it down. I will assert this, right? No, that's the case that I'm making. That irrationality and altruism don't have any light between them. Now, as a final concretization, this came up in the hangout the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. But as a final concretization, let's ask about Soviet Russia. Was Soviet Russia irrational? Or was it altruistic? It was clearly very irrational and very altruistic. Now, I challenge you, Objectosphere, and any intellectual who wants to step up, come up with an altruistic action that's not irrational, or an irrational action that's not self-destructive, and then you'll have a point against my case. So, until somebody comes up with that, altruism and irrationality are the same phenomenon. Now, where has Rand or Peikoff said that I can't remember? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Cropper, I should say patronize me. Mr. Cropper here. Go on Patreon and support me if you like what I do, and help me do more of this, or a sufficient amount of this anyway. Thank you, Mr. Cropper out.